Okay guys, so just going to make a little bit of a vid here about a few different engines in my tmaxx and what's been done to it over the years. So this tmaxx started life originally as a 2.5 Classic. So it had the 2.5 engine in it. That one doesn't have a head, but you get the idea. And maybe it lasted about half a gallon before it started really becoming a pain in the ass. So I switched to a 3.3. Which was better, but still not the greatest. Some of these trucks also came with a 2.5 like this. This is a Pro 15, but it's also 2.5 cc, but we'll go back to that in a minute. So then with a 3.3, I learned from a friend of mine that there was a heavy-duty connecting rod, different carburetor, and bearings available. So I did all those modifications to it, and it made the engine perform much better. I'll show you the carburetors here. So here we have a 3.3 carburetor, or for a 2.5 it doesn't matter because they're both the same. But if you see the venturi size, it's quite small for an engine that large. So one of the modifications that I did was put on, well, you guys won't be able to see it, so I'll have to find a flashlight. I'll be right back. Alright. So we're back. So you can see in there, that is a much larger carburetor. So you can get it open farther. Anyways, as you can see, it's a much larger carburetor than what you'd get with your 2.5 or 3.3. So this is also a lossy or low-C 3.4 engine. You can still buy these carburetors brand new on eBay. They are a little bit pricey, but they're not much more money than the factory Traxxas carburetor, and they do tune easier, perform better. And some other things that I've had people ask me about over the years with the 2.5 or 3.3 is just that exact question. Can you put the 3.3 carburetor on the 2.5? Of course you can, but it'll make absolutely no difference because they're the same. Another question is crankshafts, because they are different between these two engines. Not much, but they are. So here is a rusty old 2.5 crankshaft. And what we're trying to focus on here is the center hole, or the gas passage, whatever you want to call it. Right here, that's for a 2.5. This one is for a 3.3. And if you look at them, stop this guy from rocking back and forth here. And if you look at them, you can see the 3.3 on the left has a much larger gas passage than a 2.5 crankshaft, which is on the right. Now, that being said, for some reason, if you really like your 2.5 and you want some more jam out of it, you can put a 3.3 crankshaft in there and then switch to a lossy or low-C 3.4 carburetor. That will make a bit of a difference out of your 2.5. Even just switching to this carburetor here to your 3.3 will wake it up quite a bit. Now, that engine, it's not this one in particular, but a different 3.3 that I used to have in there. It was better, but still a 3.3. It had the Davis diesel heavy-duty connecting rod. You can also get them from RB Mods. It had fast steady bearings in it, the lossy carburetor. You can also use an OS 11K carburetor if you can find one. Just be prepared because they are expensive. Kind of the sad thing here is even the little Pro 15. It's halfway just sitting apart here, but I have it kind of put together a little bit just for a demonstration. The Pro 15 actually has a larger venturi than a 2.5 or 3.3 carburetor does. It's kind of sad. So anyways, I sold the 3.3 out of there to a good friend of mine. Ironically enough, to this day, it's still barely running. And I went with this engine that's in there right now, which is the Dynamite Mach 19. A lot of people say these engines have problems. I've never run into any myself. This is also the truck that you guys saw in the video. And as you can see, it hauls ass. This engine does actually make more power than a 3.3. It has a larger carburetor, has more ports, and a better porting job. The crankshaft is lighter. Everything about it's just better all the way around. This is also the pipe that I'm running right here, which is I don't know if you guys are going to be able to read that or not. There you go. It's a Traxxas resonator pipe. And this truck, being a 2.5 Classic, came with a little short stubby plastic pipe that came to here, which are awful, and they should be thrown in the trash. Why in the hell they decide to use a plastic exhaust, I don't know. But so I upgraded to this with the modified 3.3, which made a pretty decent improvement with the carburetor and everything else I did to it. But once I put this engine in here, it's just night and day difference. Overall, I never have to tune this engine. The only time I've really tuned it was after break-in, and then when I switched to that bottle of 30% nitro from Byron's. That's the only time I've really ever tuned it, and it just starts and runs all the time. It never has any problems. I have about 5 gallons through this engine so far, maybe 5 and a quart, maybe 5 and a half, something like that. I am going to take this engine out and clean it. I actually need to clean my whole truck because it's got a bunch of schmutz on it. So I'm going to take all that stuff, clean it off. And I am going to take my engine out because one of the last times I ran this truck, the little blue exhaust gasket that you get from Traxxas to go here fell apart and it sprayed oil all over my motor and made a big mess. So I'm going to be taking it apart. I will take it apart on camera after I clean it and show you guys what the inside looks like, so you guys can stay tuned for that. But that's pretty much just what I wanted to touch base on here, is a little bit about the difference between the 2.5 and 3.3. Funny thing is, actually, when I did have this truck originally with a 2.5 in it, that motor, it didn't last long. And this was around 2003. I actually had an OS 12 CV laying around that I got from a friend of mine that was actually in this truck at one point, and it actually performed much better than the 2.5 from Traxxas. A lot of people think that a 15 is smaller. It's not. A 15 is just a 2.5. So this is a 2.5, that's a 2.5. That over there is a 2.5. This right here is a 3.4. Unfortunately, this is a really good engine. They are made by SH engines. They are discontinued, unfortunately, but they are a really nice engine to put in these trucks. The only downside is trying to make the exhaust fit. It's a big pain in the ass. And for the questions I get about this Dynamite, a lot of people ask, is it a direct fit? Yes, it is. There's absolutely no modifications required to put this engine in your truck. The only thing that I noticed was the factory Traxxas air cleaner didn't fit properly and it kept falling off. So this is actually an air filter for a HPI RS4 or HPI Firestorm. I can't really remember which one. That's the only thing I had to do. Other than that, it comes with a spring and clip kit to make your factory exhaust header work. Carburetor linkage is all the same. It's got a bigger carburetor. It flows better. It's just all around better. So what it says is that your 3.3 here makes 0.97 horsepower, apparently, and that's what I've read pretty much about everywhere. So just a little under 1 horsepower. This right here makes almost 2. It makes about 1.9. And it also has a much broader RPM range, which is nice. So they say that this engine here hits about between 25 to almost 30,000 RPM. This engine here revs to about 36,000. So it does have a wider RPM range. But so that's just a little bit of a look at that, because I've had a lot of people ask me what I thought about it. There are some people that say they didn't last. This is the first generation Dynamite when they screwed up the back plate and the pull starter didn't fit properly. And this does use a factory Traxxas pull starter. So I just had to make a shim for it. But the new ones, they remedy that problem. So your easy start, your pull start, whatever you're going to use is going to work on there, no problem. So other than that, the factory clutch, flywheel, you name it, it all fits on there. I will say, though, sometimes you have to... I know it's dirty as hell, guys. Trust me, I know. Sometimes this little screw, not the low speed needle, but this tiny screw right where the end of my finger is, sometimes this arm is not quite in the right position, so you can actually loosen that off and then move it to the correct angle where you need it to be. So that's just another thing to look out for, but other than that, let's see if I can get a shot in there. So you can see there's a spring wrapped around the motor. And if you look carefully in the back, right in there, you can see the factory 2.5 or 3.3 header. They're the same. Has that little horseshoe clip thing that the spring wraps around to hold the manifold directly to the back of the motor. That's how they work. So if anyone's curious about that, now you know, because I've gotten the question several times. But as far as a drop-in running engine, follow a decent break-in procedure. Another thing is don't ever follow the break-in method recommended for Traxxas engines. For any engine, it's the worst that there is. The 3.3s over the years, they have changed, not in really an appearance, but the old 3.3 from years gone by was actually better. They actually had a stronger connecting rod, and I don't have any connecting rods for these engines to compare. But if you look at the connecting rod for a 3.3, on the old one it has a little slit down the center of the rod, like a little groove. And they realized, well, let's make it lighter, so they say. No, they made it weaker. What they did is they made that gouge deeper, that slot that I'm talking about, they made it much deeper. And the old rod had the oil hole on top of the connecting rod. They drilled it underneath on the new one. And they made the aluminum right where the connecting rod, or the wrist pin goes through, much thinner. So when these engines get run hard, and the nice soft aluminum that Traxxas likes to use, it will start to oval that connecting rod, and then the wrist pin will start to hammer inside the connecting rod and split it right down the center if it was hit with an axe. So you sometimes can find the old connecting rod floating around on eBay, sometimes not. It's the same part number. It's the same part number for a 2.5 or 3.3. The rods are interchangeable, the crankshaft is interchangeable, and the carburetors are interchangeable. And so are the bearings, but everything else is obviously different. Yeah, so what you can do is, if you really want to upgrade your 3.3 and make it better, take out the factory bearings, throw them in the trash. They're garbage. Go get yourself a set of fast eddy bearings, either for a 2.5 or 3.3. They're even the same for a lossy 3.4. And install a set of those bearings, and you can go to RB Mod's website and buy the heavy-duty connecting rod and the lossy or low-C 3.4 carburetor. Also, you can run an OS LC3 glow plug, and if you run these engines on like a Byron's 3011 mix fuel, they run a whole lot better. They're not the best engine in the world, but it does make them last longer and perform much better than they do from factory, and tune a lot easier. But by the time you do that, I mean, if you really want to, you can, but by the time you do that and spend all that money, this is cheaper and better. This retails for 200 Canadian. This is 129 Canadian. So obviously you can see the price difference, and performance also is much better, like I was saying. Anyways, guys, that's just a little bit of a video about a couple different engines and my old tmaxx here. So hopefully that helps some of you guys out that didn't know. And the questions I've got about my little Dynamite 19 here, I strongly recommend getting one if you're sick and tired of your Traxxas motors. Anyways, guys, get out there and burn some nitro and have fun in this hobby. Keep burning nitro as always.